Hi, I'm Phil Bridges, owner of Straight Arrow Repair. Ever want to know how a repairman fixes things? Well, come with me and I'll show you how I solve problems. Let's make things better together. Us trying to finish up what someone else started. Actually called me up and said, hey, can you explain some things on how to do it? And I did. And it's discouraging at first if you don't have experience or haven't watched my video. But he got started and we're going to finish it up. The first thing I see whenever I got here is although this is a wet area where you got a toilet that could leak, a sink that could leak, a bathtub that could overflow or leak, it looks like the air conditioner, central heating air, has been leaking down. They've already replaced the floor once and it's been running down through here, and this had linoleum. And then they took the linoleum up and then it got underneath the linoleum, which is quite likely. But what happens is, you come over here with the this A coil, if you don't change the filters, and sometimes they're in the door, works just fine. If you don't change the filters, like this one's totally clogged up, this thing will ice up and it will overflow. There's a plastic pan right here. It doesn't have very much room. Let's see if I can get this light.
Yeah, that's better.
That light in there, see, there's not much of a pan. And you need to clean these coils once a year at least. So there's a drain that comes out of this pan right here. You need to clean that out once a year at least. And so clean your coil, clean those things, and change your filter every month. But this wasn't done, so it overflowed, went down, hit the floor, and soaked back and went back into here. I can promise you that's what happened. So what I recommend to avoid this, and for your air conditioner to run good, is to clean the coil. That way it pulls air through it regularly and like it's supposed to, and change your filters. Again, the same as if you took your car and put your mud over top of the radiator, or put your hand over your mouth running up a hill. You're asking a lot of that air conditioner, and it will freeze up if it's restricted that way, or if it's low on freon, it'll freeze up, go past the pan, which only has like a ½ inch of room in this case, and then it'll just run water down, and then you'll have water damage on top of a non-running properly air conditioner. So we're going to fix what they asked me to fix in this case. This customer, the renter, is a very good renter in that the renter actually tries to fix things. But lack of experience kind of discourages. So the first thing we're going to do is take off this door so it's not in the way for doing what we need to do there. And then we can get real close to the edges. And what I normally do is just take the hinges loose. This way I can put them right back. You can almost always see where they did go. And I usually do the bottom first. Put my foot underneath it. Elbows kind of holding it to the wall. Then I put the screws over here. By the way, a lot of times people say, well, my door doesn't work. What do I do? It's got a problem. See how this, if you notice right here, this hinge is bent? Because it's bent, this door will be having a tendency to be tight over here. What you can do You see that hammer right there, Bonnie?
Alright.
Just flip that hinge over to the door. Little cheapy hinges. Flatten that hinge out, and guess what? It'll work for a while longer. This one's bent also. Not very much, not yet where it's a problem. But I already know, in order to make my work look right, you know, fix the door, and like, hey, something feels better about this place. So we put that. What they're going to do next is I'll make a starting point with like a hammer. Get real close. We'll be in to prime this batten strip up because it's nothing there but to seal the bottom of the drywall. It really is not much in the way of trim, and they put this linoleum down before they put the walls down, so the walls, they don't have to cut it. They just roll it over at the factory and then put the walls on top. So the trim is not covering the edges of the linoleum or tile, which they don't have tile. So we are going to replace that with a regular house type. That's usually my goal, is to make a mobile home a lot more like a house, a conventional home, than to try to say, oh, well, it's a mobile home, you can't do it. So here we go, and I'm going to there's a vent here in this case, but there's always obstacles. If you notice over here, spin that camera, there's water lines, and quite often there's electric lines. So you don't want to run a deep cut with a sawzall and then hit a water line, because I've done that. It ain't no fun. So what I end up doing is run a shallow, long cut with a sawzall, and in this case you're going to have to be careful not to get into the ductwork, which you can patch, but it's better not to just do the damage. We're not going to use this 3/8 or 1/2 inch plywood that I guess they put in here to walk on. And we're going to probably replace that over there by the doorway, because that doesn't look right either. So we're going to cut all this out with a sawzall. I have an oscillating saw, which we've found more and more ways to use. Didn't buy anything expensive, like we got it from Harbor Freight. It's like $20 for a cheapy one. The blades, for a package of them, is like $9. Package of 3, which you get 1 cut blade and then 2 scrapers. So for very little money, you can be doing this yourself, and I'll try to take you very slowly through all this. Looking at we want to get this out of the way. Whenever you start taking the toilet out, you want to take this loose. If you're in a house that hasn't had the tremendous amount of damage like this one, you're going to want to put a towel down, because the remainder of the tank in here, after you shut it off and flushed it, will still run water down on the floor, and then you create more damage, which can take a little while to show up. But anyway, put a towel down and take this loose. In this case, we know we're not going to be able to get these nuts through all that rust. As a rule, you won't. You can use a hacksaw. In this case, I'm using a Ryobi battery-powered sawzall, and we're going to cut these off. Then we're going to lift this toilet up. We're going to take this lid, probably sit in another room, and then put the toilet in here. Quite often, we put a rag and set the toilet in that. But the reason I do that is because if you try to move it into another room, the trap inside this toilet will run water onto the floor because you're moving around. And what we do is put it in here on the rag, rock it back and forth, and all the water, most of the water, it never gets all the water, will go into the bathtub, and then we can just lift it and put it back in here when we get the floor in. So these are things you need to be conscious of. You want to protect your top so you don't lose it, drop it, break it, and then you gotta, you're just not gonna find one like it. They buy things in lots, and when the manufacturer runs out of those, they move on to another. They then made a deal with another manufacturer. And so those manufacturers may not even be in business, and they certainly may not have made that toilet anymore. So as far as the The rusty bolts, not always is it because of a leak. A lot of times it's because the water inside here, which comes from outside through the ground, it's cool, and so like when you're sick and you're feeling really good to put your head up against a cold toilet, that toilet's cold temperature with a warmer temperature inside causes condensation and ends up collecting down here and making these rust. And having a decorative cover on there doesn't change that. The moisture's still going to be there. So that's not unusual, even in a high dollar house. Even with a bidet, you're going to have some condensation because of the change in color. They don't make insulated toilets that I'm aware of. So I put my hand on there and I can feel just a little bit of moisture. Is it going to cause the floor to go? No, it's not that much moisture. But it hits this metal and collects around it, and this is what happens. So you're going to want to cut this off, and you can use a hacksaw. So we're using a metal cutting blade in this case. That'll be bolts off with the Sawzall. Usually it doesn't do any kind of damage to the porcelain. And took the lid off, put it out of here, and we're going to lift this thing up and expect to spit a bit of water. In this case, it wasn't very much. Next, when you get that toilet up, you're going to want to put something in there, toilet paper, otherwise you're going to get all the fumes. Which is why the traps are there on sinks, and there's a trap in there on the toilet so the smell doesn't come up. Anything else that wants to come up. So there's always water in there to stop that smell. So we got to stop that smell by putting something in the hole.